This is Damo's recovery session.
Nice to have you in, Damo.
Hello, Jim,
on a
Bill.
Monday and a time to be positive, I think.
Yeah, we will.
You look like you've got some positivity about you.
We've tried to bring positivity to the Monday program, Jim, and we're going to start with a big positive plus on Jamie Elliott's performance for Collingwood on the weekend. To come back first up, Bill, in racehorse parlance after not playing since round 2 and to kick the 6 goals to ultimately win the game, but set the tone and the theme, didn't he, as he did early with 4 first quarter goals. And it was great to see him do that. It was also good to see Collingwood play in a manner in which was not common in the previous fortnight, certainly.
Spot on. And I reckon I said that during the week. I know you blokes won't give me any praise, but
No,
did I not say they'll throw the game plan out the window and they'll just go out there and have fun and enjoy it and kick goals?
I reckon you actually did say that, Bill, and we probably should give you some
I'm giving him none.
retrospective credit here for that.
No credit. Bill's
well
getting.
done.
I tell you what I like, as well as Elliott, who's a star, and it's been sad that he hasn't played enough footy given his body issues. I like little Bianco.
Yeah.
Hasn't he come in and just looked very comfortable?
Looked nice in using the ball, didn't he?
Yep.
Didn't get a lot of it, but given it's his first season of footy and he had a few interruptions in the off-season body-wise, to get him out there at the halfway point of this season, going very nicely. But look,
Poulter?
I like what he's doing, Bill. Yeah,
I like him.
He looks at home, doesn't he? He doesn't look at all out of sorts on an AFL venue. The commentary around rounds 10 and 11 games, now they were the games that they lost by 1 point and 10 points respectively to Port Adelaide and Geelong, who both think they're premiership credentialed teams, Jim.
Yep.
It was the commentary around the aesthetics of the game, wasn't it? Which was the negative. Look, if you want to just remove how it looked and you look at the scoreboard, and it's a win-loss game, they lost those games by a combined margin of 11 points. You then factor in the way Nathan Buckley structured up on the weekend when he finally was able to get someone into his forward line who actually could be a target. The body of work in those 3 weeks alone shows that Nathan Buckley can be a defensive coach, he can be an attacking coach, and he can roughly get the results that the club is getting and right to get at this stage of its evolution, at whatever that stage is, given what happened last year in the trade period.
All of that said, and I'm not disagreeing with any of it, if Adelaide kicked straight in the second quarter, the game's done.
And
Texan kicked 1 goal, 6.
Yeah.
What the hell was he doing, our man?
Yeah, he's had a good year, but that wasn't one of his good games in that regard.
Had a horrible time in front of goal. But anyway, credit to him. Winning's winning. That's all we care about. Melbourne, of course, just keep getting the job done.
They do, and in consecutive weeks have now knocked off the Western Bulldogs and Brisbane in varying ways, wasn't it, Bill? I mean, look, the midfield was ultimately dominant in both of those games, but they had to come from 4 goals down against the Lions in the most recent of those games, and that, to me, was their most impressive performance of the year.
Yeah, you're spot on. That was the question asked. Can they come back? The Lions should have been in front by more, I reckon, at half-time. But that was the question everyone was asking. And straight away, as soon as the ball was bounced, they were into it. Well done to Melbourne. They are genuine now. They are genuine.
Yeah, no doubt about it. 9 goal to 3 second half in favour of Melbourne. Simon Goodwin, a lot of credit needs to go his way because a lot of people were actually questioning whether he was the man for them going forward last year and the year before when they were underwhelming. Yeah. Now they're ridiculously overwhelming. He's got to take a lot of credit.
They do, and they took a lot more out of 2020 than I think most people on the outside of the club did. They blew it up late, didn't they? They missed by percentage only when it came to the finals, but there were games, I think it was around 14 and 15 that they lost where they were meant to win, and that would have got them in. They still drew on what they felt they learnt out of last year, and you just can't talk more impressively about them, can you, than with what they've done? Because the adversity came even before the first round. They spent their whole pre-season preparing to have a forward line of Wiedemann and Brown, and then they didn't get those two guys together in the same team until round 9. And now one of them, Brown, not even in the mix. Wiedemann yet to establish himself as the permanent, but although I feel he's doing enough without having the massive impact stats-wise and on the scoreboard-wise. But I wouldn't be surprised if Ben Brown gets another look in at some stage somehow. But they've managed to do it with a makeshift forward line. Tom McDonald's amazing. He was so crucial back in 2018, wasn't he, when they got on that other preliminary final role. Just on the off-field component to it, Bill, I know you're across this too, but the loss of the game being not played in Alice Springs last Friday, combined with next Monday's game, the Queen's birthday game, being moved from the MCG to the SCG, about a $1.8 million shortfall on the books there for the Demons. It's unfortunate given that their two best wins in maybe 20 years when it comes to home and away wins have also, unfortunately for them, coincided with a hit on the books, which is not their doing.
Yep. No, that is tough.
spot on.
In fact, speaking of Tommy McDonald, Rabbits and I were talking about it while we were waiting for you for hours to get your fat ass in here and start working. But Tommy is getting on the end of much better ball movement. The way Melbourne are moving the ball and getting it inside 50 is unrecognisable from previous years.
Yeah, spot on. And he's kicking well. He's kicking beautifully. But the other thing was, he was very quiet at half time. So was Oliver. So was Petrarca. But they all got dirty. They got their hands dirty. And he was very good after half time, Tommy McDonald. So I love the way he goes about it. Well done to him. Well done to Melbourne. I tell you what else was a positive you got to have down there. The Dreamtime at Oz, at OS. Over there in Perth. The public, 56,000 people turned up, and what a game.
Yeah, they've had so many good occasions with the Indigenous ceremony around these games, haven't they, Bill, now for a number of years, but no ceremony has been done better than what was done at Optus Stadium on the weekend. I'm not saying it was the best, but no ceremony's been done better. And then the game itself lived up to the hype that was part of the appeal to the game being moved there and embraced by the people in Perth. And to think that Melbourne could start the third quarter or the fourth quarter, Essendon could start the fourth quarter with effectively a 4-goal deficit, and to hit the front less than halfway through that last turn, and then Jim to then watch Richmond just go, okay, you want to go with us?
Jeez.
Do you really want to go with us? Well, let's go.
Like Lord Sebastian Coe at about the 1,100 metre mark, just dropping the hammer, and they just couldn't go with him. And they're still an extraordinary footy team, Richmond, and they showed it in that 15-minute burst. When they get it right, you just can't go with them.
No, you can't. Bill, what should they now do with Marby or Chol? Covered, obviously, for Nankervis, who wasn't in the team. He could be back as early as this week for the West Coast game.
Well, I tell you what, two phones, and the other boy, Coleman Jones.
Oh, yes.
Tell you what, there'll be some clubs knocking on doors and wondering what's going on with those two. So, now, as you said, Nankervis looks like he comes back.
Does Chol stay in if he does, though, Bill?
Yeah, I think so. Because he's more than a ruckman. He can play forward. He roams around beautifully. He can play. So I reckon he does stay in, yes.
Because they won. Of the three premierships
Jones.
they've won, they've gone into two of those three with makeshift ruckman. I mean, you used to make a lot of fun with Sean Grigg, Jim, who did it.
Premiership. He calls himself a premiership ruck.
2017, and even last year, Marlon Pickett was effectively the second ruck in that Sean Grigg way. In 2019, they had Soldo in the team, so there's the double whammy ruckman, but their preference seems to be that they just go with Nankervis. But Chol's form is almost irresistible now when it comes to his needs. Western Bulldogs, while we're on the positives, I thought it was just a really workmanlike performance by them against the Dockers yesterday, who were gallant. We'll get to them on the other side of the equation, not from a bad negative sense, but from a bad situational sense in the injuries. We'll get to that soon. But the Bulldogs just do what they have to do this year. There's a predictability about them, which is powerful. And once again, it was Bontempelli who just before half-time with 2 long bomb goals, and then even in the third quarter when Liberatore, unusually for him, kicked 2 key and crucial goals at key times. They just step up when they need to, and they're just winning the games of footy. And it was good to see them bounce back too after what they were faced with the previous week when Melbourne got them, and their previous and only other loss in the year was against Richmond. Yes. So they're losing to the absolute best and doing the right things against every other team.
They're very well positioned, the Western Bulldogs. While we're going with the goods, I'm going to throw a player from Fremantle into the goods. Might be my favourite player in the last 10 years, Mundy, and he is just getting better and better. He is an extraordinary footballer, David Mundy, for me, Purple. If he's not in the All-Australian team right now, the selectors don't know what they're looking at.
I agree with that, Jim. And while there's still 10 rounds of footy to go, he'd only need to just even the ledger on being half at a decent player in 5 or 6 of those. And I reckon he should be in. I reckon he's almost done enough to be guaranteed that spot.
I'll give you 2 more. Shai Bolton and Zach Bailey.
Well, Zach Bailey, definitely. Bolton, maybe, but certainly Zach Bailey.
It'd be nice to see some fresh names like those two in there too, isn't it, Bill?
Yeah, it would be. Hey, what about the goal? Speaking of Freo and positive, little Mekong,
little Stephen.
Steve, what about that goal on the boundary?
What the hell was he thinking? Just a little banana from 40?
He's happy with it too, wasn't he?
Then turned to the crowd and a little get around me. There was a bit too much of that for my liking. No, it was a very good goal. I agree with that. Terrific. Hey, the Swans, speaking of just getting the job done.
It was important from the point of view of just staying ahead significantly of the teams that were starting to emerge outside the 8, like a GWS and an Essendon going into that particular period. So I'm now absolutely convinced that they're there in September. They've done, in my eyes, more than enough. Look, some results have gone their way fortuitously, but they've worked hard to get themselves into those situations anyway, and I still think there's significant upside in the remainder of 2021. I know you've got a little bit of a
I'm with you.
question mark.
They've done well, and they were very poor last year, so to bounce back this quickly and be as good as they are is great credit to Horst Longmire and his staff. I also thought West Coast fat. I mean, we're going to get to Carlton, and I know you've got some strong thoughts on them, but that's a waffle team they played on the weekend, and to travel and win, you got to hand it to them.
Exactly right. It was East Fremantle seconds they played, and Carlton was supposed to win. Well done to the West Coast. Did you see how many they had out? Who was actually out? It's a disgrace, Carlton. Well, they should have won that. I can't believe it.
Well, take your pick on who's the best of these five, and each individual could mount a case of being the most important player of the team. Oscar Allen, who I think is now their most important player. You've then got Jeremy McGovern, who is in any other season. Shuey, who just is the captain and a superstar. Kennedy, who's ageing but still very important. And Tim Kelly, who's sitting some nice form. Then throw in Liam Duggan too, who's a first picker. They then lose Brad Shepherd early in the game with concussion. I know that was mitigated somewhat by McKay going down as well, but ultimately there's 7 names inside their best 11 or 12.
No, I'm with you. All right, we need a break because this positivity can't last.
It's the rush hour. JB and Bill on Triple M. Damian Barrett is in the studio. Gone through the positives of round 12. Now we go through the negatives, and we've got a couple of big Melbourne clubs in the crosshairs.
Where are we starting?
We have to start with the club, Jim, that I think you know that I've got a real problem with, that being Carlton. We talked all week that was a game that they could not possibly lose against West Coast. The bookies fell from 2. They were into the 2-1 on, Bill, in the old bookmaking vernacular, less than $1.50. 4-8 now, Jim, going into the bye for them after round 12. Not one win out of 7 matches this year against teams in the top 8 there. Ultimately, recruits have not worked, and there's been a lot of them on a lot of good money over the duration. They've now got a problem with how to manage the 295-game player in Mark Murphy, how they get him to 300, because I think they've committed to him. I think they need to. And then you've got the other problem too, that being the coach, who's now got a 17-win, 23-loss scoreline since taking over in 2019. There is nothing that is out of the ordinary when it comes to the Blues. And here we are yet again, halfway through a season, it's already shot to bits.
Spot on. I just thought they were terrible. Like, as you said, the punters have backed him into $1.50. West Coast had all those injuries. West Coast can't win away from Perth. And they smashed him in contested ball, that's just a thing on the day. You got to win that. You got to actually fair dinkum have a go. They didn't. They were poor. Gee, they were poor. And I don't know what they do with David Teague, to be honest.
Well, they've got the bye, as you said, Damo, and then after that they've got the Giants, Adelaide, and Freo.
Yep.
And this is what Carlton can do.
Yes.
They can get on these late season rolls when the season's done.
Yep.
And everyone starts going, oh, hello.
Yeah.
Now there's some, some light at the end of the tunnel, but they do it when the season's shot.
But that's if they win all 3. Even if they win all 3, and they'll lose one of them because that's what they do, they'll only be 7 and 8 anyway.
But what I'm saying is they can tickle the old what.
Yes.
But it's always once the season's shot.
Yeah.
The work's got to be done in your first 10 games.
Absolutely. When they went to 0-2 to start the year, it was yet again, here we go again. And then they managed to get it back a little bit, but not against the top 8 teams. And I've said it, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, Jim, they never, ever surprise us with an outcome, do they? You just don't, did you see Carlton on the weekend? Geez, they were good. No, you never, ever say that about them. And that's I think, as big a problem as they've got. To hear David Teague regularly talk after a game, our fans won't be happy with that. No, well, they won't be. And they haven't been for a very long time. And the almost realisation last night too, there was a slight change in narrative that we're a fair way off the pace here when it comes to some of the competitive ball that they're just not capable of getting. And just back on the Mark Murphy situation, I feel they owe it to him to get to 300. They've gone into the season knowing the situation he's in. They haven't really used him meaningfully, and maybe he's not capable of being used meaningfully, but I feel he's worthy of it. Now, if the season's shot to bits, I think with the 10 games remaining, he needs to play 5 of them. I think they owe it to him, given what he's been through.
He's been very loyal and stuck around in some pretty very tough times.
Yep.
St Kilda don't miss the negatives for me.
No.
I really like their coach, Brett Ratton. I reckon he's a beauty. But he got prickly during the week about, we're not 9-1 or 1-9 or whatever it was. And I just thought... And then I see Simon Leflin, who I like as well, but he's starting to get worried about, how his players are being spoken about in the media.
Yeah.
Just get your footy right.
Yeah.
You won a final last year. To lose that game, I know they were inaccurate and all the rest of it, but It looked from the outside looking in. We do a messaging segment on Saturdays. They're getting the messaging slightly wrong at the moment. Let's just focus on the 2 hours.
Couldn't agree more with what you've just said there, Jim. It's a perspective that, does shed light on where they are at and how they feel they're being viewed. And it's not good. I mean, to get to this stage of this season with just the 5 wins to their name, and 4 of the 8 losses have been horrendous, and really horrendous, and season demoralising losses. And even now, they're going to be without Membry and Ross for this weekend's game for personal reasons. But both have baby situations. Ross with twins, and Membry about to have a child. So you absolutely can understand the decisions that those guys have made with COVID and not being able to be in a state for those games. But yeah, you look at the inaccuracy. It was King against Geelong 3 weeks ago. It was Jack Higgins on the weekend. And look, okay, you can say he played well, but 1 goal 6 from the 7 shots at goal, it's just...
But too late that would have won him the game. I reckon. You slot both of those, you win. Yeah. And he missed them both badly too. Yeah. So, I mean, he will be hurting on the back of that, and everyone's missed who's played any sport, to be honest. So, I just thought during the week, and even after the game, they look to me to be focusing on the wrong things.
And it's a good point you make, Jim, because even another point to your list there is Brett Ratton then highlighting, volunteering that Max King's got a sore back. Now, who does that? Yeah. Coaches hide injuries that players have got. Yep. I mean, we saw that David Teague got himself into trouble for protecting the injury that Paddy Cripps has had. We had a criticism of him for those reasons. But to volunteer it, I mean, he's chosen to play him in a game of footy, which he hasn't performed in again. Wear it. I mean, once you're across the white line, don't you, Bill? You're right.
Yep. Oh, spot on. There's no excuses once you cross that line. The other interesting thing was our man, Lordo, been knocked back to take Max King away and just have a little, he coached him at school. He knows Max King. He just wanted to have a little chat to him about his goal kicking, and the Saints said no. So I reckon they're sitting back, maybe the Saints saying, geez, everyone's having a go at us. What's going on? But don't feel like that. You've got to get out there and start winning games.
Yeah. Well, the other thing with messaging, you can get it right too. I loved Chris Fagan after that game. I don't know whether you heard his presser, Damo, but he just said, hey, we played about half against the best team in the comp.
That's right.
So, we just got to wear that. But, that's what we did. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Why do coaches ever be anything but just brutally honest? Yeah. Because there's enough people who know, looking at all of this messaging, going, right, there's a coach that gets it.
And we know the bullshit, don't we? We know the spin. Everyone knows the spin and the bullshit. Hey, Dane Zorko, while we're in negatives in Brisbane, no need for that, Zorks.
No, that was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't. And then they've actually accepted that. They won't be challenging that at the tribunal, so he'll miss a week. Just on the bads, but not in a critical way. Just the poor Fremantle situation late in that game against the Bulldogs. We saw Griffin Logue connected by Aaron Norton, who is a dangerous machine out in the footy ground, isn't it? We saw what he did to Tim English, his own teammate, who missed 3 or 4 weeks with a concussion and ultimate face injury from him. He just took him out, and he was out of the game at that point. And then in the space, quite incredibly, I've never seen anything like it, in the space of 1 minute, or maybe it's been 45 seconds, Fife went down with a shoulder. Brendan Cox somehow did a hamstring, Bill, which seems to be season-ending. And Sean Darcy also required treatment for hamstring and wasn't back on the ground. So they were out at that point, and at that point of the game, they just got themselves back into a 9-point deficit, and were coming. I don't think they would have got there, but they were coming.
No, they've been riddled with it. It's extraordinary. I actually had a list sent from Champion Data a few weeks ago. Last 4 seasons, Fat, the most games lost due to injury in the competition. And Fremantle and North Melbourne are that far ahead of the next worst.
More than GWS.
More than the lot.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know.
Why do they always and the Giants too? Why do they always have injuries? Those two sides.
I don't know, but it's certainly Brisbane the best on the other end of the ledger. But it's, I mean, if you're running those joints, you'd be turning that part of your club upside down because it kills you.
Well, Brisbane's managed to get full careers now out of certainly Lincoln McCarthy, who could not get a game at Geelong just because his body let him down. And Danaher hasn't missed a beat since he's been there, and as we know, had basically played half a season in the previous 3. So.
And the other one is Cockatoo. If they get him in there and play some games together, look out, they're doing something right. I've got a question about the Bombers. How are they going to pay, and how much do they pay Parrish, Merritt and Stringer? Because they're all out of contract, Damian.
Stringer becomes the distant third on those conversations, I feel, Bill. That doesn't mean he's not still required, but he needs to get his head around that the contract financially for him will be significantly less than the other two, and that's just where he's at right now. So you deal with the other two, Bill, and I, strangely enough, I wouldn't have said this 6 weeks ago. I'd be putting Parrish at number one in terms of the need to retain. I feel he, more than Merritt, has transformed this footy club, and it's all come on the back of Dylan Shield going down, hasn't it? With him being able to get into the position he wanted to play desperately.
How much? How much is Parrish then? What's he worth?
I'd be making him the 750-ish, and if that means Merritt needs to take about the same or a bit less, well, he needs to get his head around that, because you can't get them all. Wow. You can't pay them all that money, given they've already committed to Dylan Shield on big money, and also Devon Smith on reasonable money as well.
It's going to be interesting, that. And then,
it's a good question.
Stringer comes in third. That is interesting. Stand by there.
Buses.
We'll get that one back from Hawthorn just because they had the bye and they've been sort of out of the news this week, Jim. So we'll put that second one at the Blues. So we've now got two down there, and that other one we've got in the shed there. That's going to get its a quick service and head down to Linton Street in Moorabbin for the Saints.
One down there.
Yeah, don't like what they've been dishing up
had a great week.
on and off field this year. So yeah,
agree with that. But they have got the juice to bounce back if they get it right.
Have they?
I think.
Have they?
I don't know if they have, Jim.
I reckon, well, if you look at the sides that are outside the 8, and they're now 2 games outside all 4 of them, Essendon, GWS, Freo and St Kilda. GWS and Freo, too much injury, unless they can miraculously get their best players back. And it's hard to do.
GWS should get a few back this week, including the possibility only at this stage of Toby.
Yeah, so they've both got the ability to get there if they can get healthy. But Essendon definitely, and St Kilda, if they can get their act together, they're the 2 for me that could maybe bounce themselves back into contention. And Essendon have got Hawthorn next up, and St Kilda have got Adelaide next up.
Okay.
So we want, Bill, one of or a couple of those 4 challenging. We don't want the 8 set now.
Well, is it set?
Well, they're 2 games clear, Richmond and West Coast.
They are.
So we want them challenging from underneath.
If it wasn't Richmond sitting in one of those positions, you'd probably say they're potentially vulnerable, but it's Richmond. So they're staying there. And West Coast showed enough in that heart win yesterday to make me think that they've turned a corner of sorts, because that was the worry about them, wasn't it? They hadn't shown the grit that's often required, and they just kept losing away from home. But I reckon they've, even though it was only St Kilda, I feel they showed enough yesterday to think that they've fixed that part of their game up.
Plot thickening here, Purple, because Richmond, of course, play West Coast this Sunday night. Have a listen to this. Essendon and GWS, Freo and St Kilda, who are the 4 teams 2 games out, play Hawthorn, North Melbourne, Gold Coast and Adelaide.
Okay.
The bottom 4 teams. So we might just get a bit of jumping up, Fat, which is what we want.
Well, we do. You're right. Cats have got 4 hard games in a row, by the way.
Have they, Bill?
Well, they got Port Adelaide, then they take on Brisbane, then they take on the Western Bulldogs, and then they've got someone else. So they've got 4 tough ones coming up.
But we weren't talking about them. They're 3rd on the ladder.
Well, I brought them up.
Yeah, right, okay. Damo, great seeing you.
See you.
Damo's recovery session.